this door to the left, okay? Hmm? Hmm? Okay. All right, so we have some employees here that can certainly help answer any questions. What we're going to do today for our agenda, we are going to talk about our Wright-Hennepin's residential and commercial programs. We're going to talk about the residential equipment installation from our field group, and then we've got our new services department will also be here talking about EVs and residential generation. And we have a guest speaker today. His name is Luke Nemeth. So that's what we'll be talking about today. And I don't know, just thought we would talk a little bit about Wright-Hennepin and just give you a little bit of background on Wright-Hennepin. Wright-Hennepin is the 4th largest cooperative in Minnesota. We serve about 58,000 consumers in the northwestern Hennepin and the Wright counties. We have about 69,000 meters, so we're providing service to 69,000 units. And then we have, for our EV programs, because we're going to talk about a lot on our EV programs today, we have 457 members participating with an electric vehicle. That means that they're on a program of some sort. And then we also offer other energy saving programs like water heating, dual fuel. We have air conditioning programs. We have 25,000 members participating in those programs, and some have more than one program that they're participating in. And we have 151 employees. And a little bit of EV terminology. So I always like to start with the basics, right? So an HEV is a hybrid electric vehicle. That'd be like a Prius. And a Prius does not plug in. It has a small electric motor that assists its internal combustion engine, and then that battery replenishes itself with regenerative braking. A PHEV is a plug-in hybrid. This is powered both by gasoline and also electricity. And then the BEV is the all-electric vehicle. And it does not have what's called an ICE, which is an internal combustion engine. It doesn't have a fuel tank, no exhaust pipes, and it relies solely on electricity to get down the road. So Wright-Hennepin is doing a lot to try and promote and educate. And so what we have done in the electric vehicle side of things, in 2018, we had a pilot study. And what we did with that pilot study was we installed and tested the Zeph Energy charging stations. And what we wanted to do was gather information on charging behavior. So that pilot study was set up with no control, nothing from the utility to manage that. We wanted to really get some good data on what people would just do innately. And then in 2021, we did another pilot study. And this pilot study was to evaluate whether a subscription rate program would be beneficial. And we got a lot of positive feedback on that. So we are going to roll a subscription program out this May by the end of the month. So we're continually looking at ways that we can educate. We have a team of employees that are working very hard on our EV programs and just education and how we can help with the EV movement and how that's affecting the electric grid, right? So we also have a lot of we're planning events, and we've had events. So we've had a electric ride and drive where we bring in vehicles and we let the membership test drive those vehicles, and that's been widely received. They really enjoy that. Kind of cool, fun evening that we have. This year we're going to have an EV advisory group where we're going to invite some members to come in and talk about our program. So again, we can gather some information and try to make the programs fit, behaviors, what people are looking for in their EV and how they charge that EV. We're also going to have an education class. We're going to call that the EV 101 class, to bring people that don't know much about EVs or curious about EVs and try and just give some good, solid education and answer any questions that the membership have. And then we're going to continue to have our contractor meetings. So again, we appreciate you coming today and taking the time out. So when we talk about member education, what does that mean? So our goal is education. We feel that as a cooperative, that's one of our core things that we do, is just to help bring understanding and education to the membership. So ways that we're doing that, we have a print newsletter, we have an e-newsletter, we have information on our website. We're in social media talking about EVs and other things through the co-op, and then our events. We're engaging with car dealerships, and not necessarily for Wright-Hennepin per se, but to help educate. When someone comes into a dealership and they're looking at an EV, they don't really know what goes into what's next, you know? And so we get that question here a lot. So we thought if we could engage with the dealership and just give some tools to try and help with that, we thought that that would be important. And then we just really want to be a credible and reliable source that people trust to get them in the right direction. So how have we adopted EVs here at the co-op? So we have 2 PHEVs, and we've got a Mitsubishi Outlander, a Honda Santa Fe. We also have 2 all-electric vehicles. We enrolled a Tesla in our fleet and also a Ford Lightning. So we're learning about that by actually using these vehicles and understanding how they work. And then we're also evaluating other needs that we might have within our company to, you know, deploy another EV and what our needs might be there. So then the other thing that we talk about a lot is charging and how do we help support that charging. So we here at Wright-Hennepin, we do have a DC fast charger out in our guest parking lot, and then for our employees and for the units that we have in our fleet, we have 6 level 2 charging station on our campus as well. We deployed the DC fast charger in 2015, and then the level 2s were just in 2019. Also, Albertville Outlet Mall has a DC fast charger, and it also has 2 level 2 charging stations there too. So in summary, Wright-Hennepin is committed to EV adoption, and we'll be expanding our fleet and including more EV options as things grow and we learn more about and how they develop, right? So we'll continue to evaluate and offer programs for charging that make sense for the membership. And then we feel there's great support both state and federally to help with the promotion of EVs and the charging of EVs. We will continue to offer support and education and, you know, be here to answer questions. And we want to be a resource for our contractors as well as you're learning and you're growing with the requests that you're getting from your customers. Any questions for me? I'm sorry, I didn't introduce myself. My name's Robin, and I'm the sales manager here at Wright-Hennepin. So we help head up the programs and do all that sort of thing. So if you have any questions or anything comes down the road, I'm happy to help, and so is the staff here as well. Are there any questions? I'll pause for a second. Okay. So next to talk about our commercial EV programs will be Nathan Carls.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Nathan Carls. I am Wright-Hennepin's business account representative, and this morning we're going to go over our commercial EV programs that Wright-Hennepin has to offer. So the agenda, I'm going to talk about our commercial rebates, any state grant opportunities that are available, kind of why install EV chargers on a commercial side. We're going to show you some pictures from Wright-Hennepin of our commercial industrial members that have installed charging stations and kind of some of our key takeaways, and I'll follow up with any questions in the end. So on the commercial EV charging rebates, we have 2 levels of charging rebate for you. If you install a level 2 Zeph Energy EV charging station, we require you to fill out the blue rebate form and submit that to us along with a copy of your invoice. And we have a $2,000 rebate per charger. We do also require you with a ZEFnet charging one to fill out the green form as well. So you fill out both forms, send them in along with the invoice. We can do $2,000 up to a max of 4 charging stations. If you have an other brand charging station other than a ZEFnet, you only have to fill out the green form. And then we have $1,000 per charger or up to $4,000. So think of a ChargePoint, Juicebox, Ford Pro charging station, Tesla charger. So with state grant, yes.
You said commercial, so it would not be, these would not be for residential?
Correct. Yep, it'd be a commercial business, so long as you have a tax ID number, you know, I think retail store, hotel, auto shop, we can get you a rebate for that commercial side of things. So, does that answer? Okay. State grant opportunities. So we want to make sure that everyone is aware that Minnesota Pollution Control Agency did receive $47 million from the National Volkswagen diesel emissions settlement over the course of 10 years, and it actually began in 2018. It's broken down into 3 phases, and kind of we're now getting into the beginning of phase 3. So over the course of years, they offered EV charging stations, grant money for clean heavy-duty electric vehicles, electric school buses, heavy-duty off-road equipment and vehicles. So if you want to, we could reach out to the state. You can go on the state's website, be informed on that. There could be some opportunities for the contractors here to get some funding grant opportunities. Why install EV chargers? So you're going to attract customers who stay longer. They're going to spend more money and become loyal. They've done studies on this, and EV owners are going to seek out businesses with a charger. So if you have a Tesla, you probably want to shop at Hy-Vee that has a charging station versus Cub that doesn't. So, or if you're going to stay at a hotel that has a charging station versus one that doesn't. So customers are going to stay an average of 50 minutes longer at the store, and they said that the EV driver's income is kind of twice the national average. It is also sending a signal to current and potential customers that they are ahead of their competitors. So the pictures included are a couple of our commercial industrial charging stations. One is the fast charger and the level 2 chargers up at the Albertville Premium Outlets. And then Hy-Vee in Maple Grove has a couple level 2 charging stations as well. We have some more pictures. Great River Energy in Maple Grove under the solar array have a bank of level 2 charging stations for their employees and guests. Polaris headquarters in Medina recently installed a charging station out front. And some of our hotels in Maple Grove area also have installed a row. They have 4 charging stations. They kind of been doing a Tesla, and then they also offer kind of a Clipper Creek charger. So the Courtyard Marriott and the Hampton Inn in Maple Grove. Some of the main takeaways this morning, Wright-Hennepin, we do offer up to $8,000 in commercial rebates for our commercial industrial membership. Please make sure that you're aware that the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency offers grant money for EV and EV chargers. There's a good amount of EV charging infrastructure in our service territory, and because of the way the world is moving right now, the EV infrastructure is going to continue to grow exponentially over the next decade. This picture here is a ZEFnet energy charging station that was recently installed outside the Annandale Food Shelf. And the Annandale Food Shelf is looking at getting an all-electric van for their business. If you do have any questions, feel free to contact myself or my coworker Ryan, and we would be happy to help you out and get the information that you need. Yes?
On the ZEF chargers that you're promoting, do they have ability to, thank you, do they have, on the ZEF chart, There it is. Thank you. On the ZEF chargers, do they have, is it just free electricity for the consumers that pull up, or is there like a credit card system for charging the people that use?
So with Zeph Energy charging stations, you have, they have various options available. So they're residential type charging stations like here or in the picture of the Annandale food shelf. That's just basically, plug in and go. What Zeph does offer, Zeph offers a lot of behind the scenes metering capabilities, load control, and then depending on how the commercial industrial membership can set it up, that you can then curtail, you can allow it to charge or not charge. You can do an RFD card. Zeph Energy also has kind of a commercial grade industrial charging station where they do have like the credit card access, where you can set up your cloud information and do that. So they do have a lot of different opportunities with it. Zeph Energy commercial charging stations offer a 5-year warranty. Kind of industry standard is a 3-year. Along with the Zeph Energy charging station, then you do have that tech support with that, and then they can kind of get set up to do a lot of that behind the scenes metering and billing like that. Well, they'll do a pass-through charge. So if you're gonna install it in a hotel application, or I mean a apartment application, then the apartment property manager wouldn't have to manage the usage. It would just get passed right to the end user.
And Nathan, it really is up to the business. So the business can determine if that's something that they want to provide to the people that are coming to their business to shop, or, it is kind of expensive to bring that kind of structure onto their property or offer that. And so that's where we see that you might see that charge for that one, each session that they might have, so.
Any other questions? Next, I'd like to introduce April. She will be talking about Wright-Hennepin's residential EV programs. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is April. I'm one of the product specialists that many of you may have spoken with, but a lot of our membership will call in. I'm one of 5 that are here in the office. Today in attendance, I have my colleague Elena, Andrew, and Josh. So some other names you guys may have spoken with as well. So right here, we're going to jump right into our residential EV charging off-peak programs. This is our main ones with Zeph Energy, and our membership does have the option to bring their own charger. So for instance, if they buy a Tesla, they can bring their Tesla charger, as long as it's a level 2 wall-mounted charger. So when we look here at this, the programs are the same through all of them. We have our overnight program, and we have our time of use program. We also, when they get billed on their electric bill, they'll not be cost to a power cost adjustment, which is going to be our, it's a price that fluctuates based on the cost of fuel. So it can go down in the winter and higher in the summertime. So they don't see that when they go on one of our off-peak programs. The rebates do vary a bit with this. Zeph Energy is up to $1,000, where when they bring their own charger, level 2 charger, they get up to $500. So we do have that new subscription program that we are rolling out at the end of this month. It is a $35 flat charge per month for those that utilize the charging time of 10 p.m. to 5 a.m., which is our overnight time. It does leave their charger open to when they can charge at any point in time, subject to our standard time of use program rates, which between 5 a.m. and 5 p.m., it's estimated about 12 cents per kW, and 5 p.m. to 10 p.m., which is our high demand time, which is about 29 cents. The program is available with any level 2 240 wall-mounted charger. BEVs and PHEVs do qualify to participate as long as they have at least a 4.5 kW charge rate. There is no rebates available on the PHEVs, and the member is responsible for installation of the charging station and the metering equipment.
Clarification on that?
Yes.
So that flat rate is $35 regard. What do you think? Is a flat rate $35 regardless of usage?
The 35 covers unlimited charging through the overnight time from 10 PM to 5 AM. So if they decide they want to charge any other time, then they will get charged the time of use. So if they charge the whole time, 5 AM to 5 PM, or I'm sorry, from 10 PM to 5 AM, it's just a flat 35. Any other time outside of that time frame is when they get charged separately. Did that answer it?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. And then with Zeph Energy, with the charging station, it is, again, with both programs, the time of use program, overnight charge program, and the subscription program. It must be used with an all-electric vehicle with a 4.5 kW to qualify for any rebates. An instant $500 rebate is off the retail price when they go in to purchase it off of the Minnesota EnergyWise website. And once everything is installed, they also get a $500 Conservation Improvement Program, or SIP rebate, applied to their electric account as a credit once everything, again, is completed. All of our rebates are paid on a first-come, first-served basis, and again, it's not subject to that power cost adjustment. So, yes?
You know, you're talking about these, you know, charging stations. Bolts all plug in. Are those all, can they get any rebates on that at all?
Not if,
Level 2, but they just have a, you know, 50 amp receptacle.
so to be qualified for our rebate programs, which would allow that off-peak rate, there has to be a level 2 wall-mounted charger installed. If they plug into a standard outlet with no metering equipment, they're subject to their standard electric rates. So they would have to purchase the charger in order to qualify.
That's gotta be only charging station.
Just to spin off of what he was saying, he says it's gotta be a wall-mounted unit?
Yes,
And
sir.
does it specify it's gotta be hardwired?
Yes.
That's right in there, it's gotta be hardwired. I'm just curious,
Yep.
cause,
Yeah, mobile units don't qualify.
well, cause a lot of these mount to the wall, they're not really mobile, you know, they bolt to the wall, they plug in, so. Not that I, you know, that's not really my forte, but I'm just trying to
Yeah.
get clarity for him on that.
Yeah, the goal is the charging station does not move. That's the goal, because we do have, with, the member brings their own charger especially, our metering equipment has to be attached to it. So that's why we ask for them to be wall-mounted, because we know they're not gonna be moved if they're going on vacation and they wanna take a charger with them.
Cause there are some brands I know that have different ratings that they bolt to the wall. You can put a receptacle in and you can plug them in, they're up to a certain rating if you plug in, but you also can hardwire that same identical unit and not cord and plug connected. So I just, for clarity, there are some
Right.
units that you go either way with.
Right, and if something like that, we would double check with our EUC and make sure it is something that we can, make sure that we can connect our metering equipment to. Anything else?
So just based on, the reason for that is with the co-op, we're metering that equipment. We want to make sure that what is being installed on the program is what is there. So that's part of the reason why it's hardwired. There's not an opportunity to change out or do something different with that plug. So that ensures that what the member's installing is what is on the program and what they're being billed for, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Just to clarify what Luke started, and those outlets could be dedicated to the EV charger, and most likely would be, and it's more like a dryer outlet. It's you know, 2-pole, and it's not going to be used for too much other than maybe an EV. Maybe, I suppose you could do welding with it at night or something, but so I guess there's a little gray area, but typically if it were an outlet, it would be because they wanted to change the EV charger down the road to a different style later, or if it broke, it would be easier to replace, but it would still be dedicated to that outlet. So
Yeah, more with like the details on like the installation and the dedication of the outlets and stuff. My colleague coming up next, Chad, he's gonna talk about all the installation stuff and the dedications, and he's the EUC that will come in and do the final checkout with all of our residential members. So he'll be able to answer those a little more in detail for you. That's just not my, my forte, the installation aspect.
And as things develop and grow with the EV programs, we may see some things that change, but this is where we're at today. These are the programs that we're offering, and like I had said earlier, we're gonna have an EV advisory group. We're doing some different things. We're trying really hard to evaluate what makes sense, but as we've rolled the programs out and where we're at right now, these are the specifications for that program. I'm not gonna say that they might not change in the future, but that's where we're at, and we appreciate the feedback. For sure.
Are we to buy the ZEF EV chargers on the open market, or are you gonna offer them for sale or give them to your members?
So the member themselves would go to the Minnesota Energy Wise website. We have to qualify them as an existing co-op member before we are able to release it for shipping to that member. Just because that is a co-op store and being able to offer that $500 instant rebate, they have to be a co-op member. So, and it's,
Were you asking about the 80?
no, he'll, EV.
Just the charging station?
Buying the physical hardware,
Right.
where do you get it?
Yeah.
Yep, that would be, the member will provide that to to you guys to do the install. They get it off of the Minnesota Energy Wise website.
I mean, can they buy one on Amazon and get a rebate?
They could bring their own charging
Yeah.
station and do that for
Right.
sure.
Oh,
It's not required that it be the Zephynet, but we have a lot of people that say, I don't know what I want to do. And the nice thing about the Zeph energy charging station is that it has the metering equipment on board, and an additional meter is not required on the outside of their home. So we have a lot of members they don't want to add another meter. So that's very interesting to them.
Could you say that again, please?
There is no, she will get to that, but the Zephynet charging station has the meter on board the charging station. So there is not a secondary meter or a sub meter required for that installation. But if you bring your own charging station, there's no way for us to monitor that without a meter being on the outside. Okay.
So, leading into why would you guys and why do we want to use the Zeph Energy Charging Station? It is a level 2 wall-mounted charger. It is universal. It comes in 3 different amperages. You have the 7.7 kW, the 10 kW, and the 11.5, commonly referred to as the Zeph 40, the Zeph 50, and the Zeph 60. It has a 3-year standard warranty. It's NEMA 4 rated for indoor and outdoor installations. There is no outside metering with these. Our metering equipment is built in to allow for easier and quicker installation, and it saves the member as well. They are headquartered here in Minnesota. Again, the member purchases through the Minnesota Energy Wise website. And again, it's $1,000 in rebates for those members with a qualifying vehicle. So our membership does have the option to bring their own charger. Again, it must be used with an all-electric or BEV with a charge rate of 4.5 kW or higher to qualify for the rebate. The charging station must be a level 2, 240-volt wall-mounted charging station. It can be used with the storage charge program, the time of use, and the subscription program. It is eligible for the $500 SIP rebate and applied to their electric once everything has been installed. Rebates, again, are on a first-come, first-served basis, and energy usage is not subject to the power cost adjustment. So here are some of the additional off-peak programs that we do offer here at Wright-Hennepin. We do have one for uncontrolled ground source heat pump, non-metered quick cache water storage. We also have a metered water storage, non-metered air source heat pump, and we do one for electric, thermal, or dual fuel. So in summary, we have charging station options for our membership. It must be, again, level 2, 240-volt wall-mounted charging station. either with the Zeph Energy Station, which is purchased again through the Minnesota Energy Wise website. They can bring their own charging stations, meaning they can purchase it from Amazon, they can purchase it from really anywhere, as long as it's a level 2 wall-mounted charger. The programs that we now offer are the overnight storage charge, the time of use, and the subscription program. All of our rebates for residential are paid on a first-come, first-served basis, and being on the program is not subject to the power cost adjustment. Any questions? Yes?
How are they metering it? How are they reading the meter? Do you have to have like I know Xcel Energy has, you have to have like a Wi-Fi signal?
So with the metering and the installation, my colleague Chad will be coming up explaining everything with those. When they bring their own, it's these over here, so it reports back to us. And then the Zeph Energy has a couple different ways that it does transmit.
Sure.
Any other questions? Wonderful. So with that, I am going to turn this over to my colleague Chad, and he will go over all the installation.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Chad Hoffman. I'm an energy use consultant here at Wright-Hennepin. Been with Wright-Hennepin for 2 years. Before that, I spent 22 years out in the field as an electrician. I'm a master electrician since 2006. We'll kind of cover some of the questions you guys had with April, kind of covering the metering and the installation and the reasons for some of that. As April mentioned, we have the time of use program and the overnight storage program. The time of use program can use the Zeph Energy Charger, or the member can provide their own. If the member provides their own charger, we will require an external meter socket that Wright-Hennepin will provide. The time of use can either be a direct metered, or it can be a CT, current transformer metered system, and it can be a sub-metered, or it could be a parallel installation to the existing service. The overnight storage program is quite similar. You can use either a Zeph Energy or a member-provided level 2 wall-mounted station. We will again provide the external meter socket and the load control device. However, it will require a contactor of sufficient ampacity that the electrician would install. We do not provide the contactor, so that would be the electrician or the member providing that. It could be direct or CT metered, and it would be a sub-metered installation. The EV charge stations, we got the Zeph Energy charging station, or the member provided, whether it's Ford, Tesla, aftermarket, juice box, wall box, charge point, any of those. The Zeph Energy Station, so it's a level 2 charging station. Its wiring requirements are 208 to 240 volts, 2 hots and a ground. It's a pretty simple installation. You bring your power to it and you're done. The metering is all built into it. And you can use either a Wi-Fi signal, or most of them use cellular. The Wi-Fi is a backup. If the cellular signal is not good enough, they'll switch it over to Wi-Fi so that it'll communicate to the Zeph network that way. So as far as the installation in the field, you just gotta get your circuit to it and power it up, and then Zeph Energy takes care of the rest. It can be used for the overnight storage, time of use, or the subscription program. It is mounted to the wall, and again, the metering is built in. It's a sub-metered charging station, and it's quickest in and out, easiest to install.
Is that something the customer can program on his phone when to charge it?
There is an app for it to do some features with it. The recommendation is to put the timer into the vehicle itself for the charging, rather than going into the charger itself to set the timer. It's a lot easier on the car to change the features, and that's if it's on time of use. On overnight storage, the control is already built in where it'll turn on when, at 11 o'clock and turn off at 7 a.m. So, so all the charging stations come with the 240 volt power whip. And as you can see, let's see if this work. As you can see right here, that's hardwired into a box. This one here comes with an additional low voltage whip that just gets capped off into a box, so no wires are making contact with the ground or with each other. That whip is a whip that could be used for Ethernet connection, control, and a few other features that other co-ops use. At Wright-Hennepin, we don't use any of those features. So those just need to be capped off into a box to prevent contact with any live voltage or with each other. For member-provided charging stations, again, needs to be level 2 wall mounted. Can work with any of our programs, the overnight, the time of use, or the subscription. Needs to be mounted to the wall and hardwired, and can either be direct metered, CT metered, sub-metered, or parallel, depending upon the installation needs. They need to be wired to the National Electric Code and local codes. The meters shall be mounted outside between 4 to 6 feet off the ground. This picture shows an installation where the meter was mounted inside right next to the charger. That's a no-go. The meter needs to be outside so that we have access to it. Charging station must be hardwired, and any outlets for the charging stations are not allowed. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is we need to make sure that we are metering their charger. The other is we don't want it so that they can plug in and get the good rate overnight, but then they plug in during our peak and start charging during our peak, causing problems that way with demand. So, and they could do that by charging into a welder outlet just a few feet down. So that's one of the reasons why it needs to be hardwired, so that if they charge during the peak, they're going to pay the rate for charging during the peak, and kind of keeps them on the program, and we know that we're metering their car. Yes.
Thank you. Just kind of 3 questions right now, before I get too far. One was on this outlet thing. If they had a convenience outlet already in the garage, are you going to have some kind of distance? I mean,
If it's a 120 volt outlet, no.
but if they had a two pole, like a regular outlet, like for two, like that would work with be compatible with the EV, that's what you don't want.
Yeah, everything's kind of a case-by-case situation. I mean, if you go and it's a shop and you can see that there's a welder there, it's a welding outlet's been there for a while. But if they want that welder outlet added, adding it right next to where they park their EV might not be the best location for it. You know, it's kind of one of a case-by-case situation, so to speak, that way.
Okay, that makes sense. And second question was on the whether you could be the EV charger could be sub-metered or direct metered. In the scenario, in the past you've allowed this and some other utilities don't, but I just want to clarify this. If you had a solar backfeeding into the main panel and you also had the EV charging circuit coming off the main panel, so that'd be sub-metered, you allow both still, right? Solar and EV sub-metered charging station off of the same panel.
I believe what we've allowed in the past is still allowed, and then Ashley and Kurt will be up next to talk about those specific installations with the requirements with EV with solar.
I see. And then the final question was on the ZEF, when it comes with the cellular option and the Wi-Fi is backup, is there a ongoing subscription cost to the member for the cellular service?
No, there is no fee to the member for the cellular charge for the metering. That's figured into the equipment already. There's no additional monitoring charge or nothing.
For 5 years or forever?
Well, for right now.
Okay, I got it.
I can't predict what that will be like in in 5 years, there may be a change. We do have some costs involved in that, but, we have some costs involved, but where we're at right now, we have not decided to charge anything extra for that. We get a subscription rate to the program, not for the cellular service, but for the actual software that's part of the ZEF energy charging station. So does that make sense? So like we said, we're learning and we're growing with the EVs. So the way the program sits right now, we're not charging anything extra for that metering equipment. Does that help?
That's fine.
Okay.
Yes.
So that would be, for the homeowner, for the person installing this, they pay whether it's the 1,000 or the 500, depending on which charger they get. Let's just say it's the ZEF, so the $1,000 rebate. The subscription that's captured by Wright-Hennepin, that's not a subscription for the owner, correct? That they have to continually, their only cost is the 1,000, the initial 1,000, plus install.
Yeah. They can choose the program that we're just rolling out the subscription rate. So if they choose to pay for whatever usage they have, they would just be on that regular time of use or the overnight storage. If they want a flat rate, so some people just want to know what their fixed costs are, and if they're going to charge overnight, then we will capture that at a flat $35 per EV with that subscription rate. And then that would be what they would be paying for the usage portion. So there's kind of two pieces. There's the charging station. So they have to install that infrastructure in their home to be able to charge the car. And then there's the energy portion of how they charge, how they can charge that battery up and what the costs are for the battery. Does that help? Okay.
So this wiring diagram shows the direct metering approach, where you're just coming right off the breaker and right to the line side of the meter, and from load side to the charging station. So our meter sockets that we provide come with this bypass plate that you can put right back in, so they're able to charge right away. And then obviously line and load. So pretty simple on our direct metering. So for the current transformer or the CT metering, we'll provide the CT meter box for a small fee. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. $55. Thank you. So it's a matter of just running through wires through the CT. And as you can see by the diagram with the arrows, one wire goes through one way, the other phase goes through the opposite way. The nice thing about the CT metering is you can have multiple chargers as long as the total load is less than 200 amps. So you could have 2, possibly 3 car chargers on one meter. There's not too many households that have just one vehicle right now, and if you're out there to put in one EV and they got 2 vehicles, they're probably going to be getting a second one down the road. So this might be a good way to go. Unless they're going to ZEF Energy route, this might be a good way to go for planning for the future. If you do have more than one EV, if you got A phase coming from the left and B phase coming from the right on one charger, you just got to match that with the other chargers. So. And then the meter socket we provide at no cost. Needs a 240 volt power supplied in the corner here. And then the wires from the CT land right in the bottom here. And then we'll come put our meter in once we come to check it out to make sure everything looks right. So.
You guys don't require that that's a separate circuit for that 240, that could be off the water heater, something else just to power that meter, or do they want a dedicated circuit on your guys' end?
It could be a dedicated circuit. We prefer that the circuit providing that power to any of our off-peak is off of the off-peak equipment itself. We wouldn't really want it off of a water heater for the electric vehicle, because if they shut off the water heater or get rid of the water heater or anything like that, now we won't be able to meter their use on their EV.
Just curious, because obviously we're talking an EV breaker, nobody's gonna want to run 6s or 4s, depending on what kind of cable, just to power up your board.
Yep.
You know, so.
Yeah, a lot of people just put a 15 amp circuit. There is fusing in there, so there is a little bit of leeway on circuit size, but you have to verify your length of wire and everything on that. So the CT installation is fairly simple.
What's the benefit either way?
So the benefit of the direct metering, if you just got one EV, is you run your EV circuit to the meter, and from the meter to your EV, you don't have the additional equipment. The benefit of the CT metered, you can have more than one EV. Depending upon your location, if it's gonna be kind of difficult to get the number 6s outside and back in, you just have to run a number 14 and a number 12 from the CT box inside out to the meter socket. So it's a lot easier to run that smaller wire than it would be to run number 6 or number 4.
What size is your direct meter rated?
There are 100 amp sockets on the direct meter.
So, if you go back one slide, just curious. I don't need that unless you want me to talk through that. Could somebody run 100 amp to your meter and then throw a sub panel on the secondary side and feed 2 chargers that way if they wanted? 2, smaller, obviously, they wouldn't be the full, 11.5 kW, but they could feed 2 of your smaller 7.7s.
To a dedicated sub panel, yep, that would be an available option, to a dedicated sub panel that way.
Do you offer a larger meter? Let's say somebody wanted to put in larger and a single feed and a sub panel and do 2, these 11.5s, you'd be at, roughly 120, 130 amps.
So we only provide the 100 amp meter socket, but our meters are rated for 200 amps. So a standard 200 amp bypass meter could be put in, and then they could feed a dedicated panel that way also.
Just looking for options on your end as far as compliant on our end and compliant on your end, so.
Yep, I mean, we do provide it, but if they wanted to go with a 200 amp bypass, they could do that to a dedicated sub panel if that was easier, or in a new building installation. We would put some locks on the panel that prevent access, so no other circuits could be added. And we obviously would want not a 30 space panel put in for it. It would, smallest space panel you could get for the size. And that would serve the needs also. So for the overnight storage, we have to add a demand management receiver and then the contactor. So if you look at the diagram here, on the left side is the contactor provided, whether it's a 60 amp or 100 amp, depends upon the size of charger that's being installed. Our receivers require 120 to 240 volt power. So these usually work best if you're doing the CT metering. You already have the power at the meter. And then the yellow wires would go to the contactor to control the contactor. So here's a couple. This is the one that's in the picture. See, it comes with fairly about 4 foot length of wire. So your yellows are your control wires. So that would control a power circuit provided by the electrician. It's just a dry contact in the receivers, and it can be up to 240 volt control power circuit for the contactor. And then we just gotta have our power to it. We also do have 2 function and 3 function receivers. This is a 2 function, where it also has a 30 amp relay in it if they're adding a water heater or another load. You can put 1 receiver to handle the water heater or dual fuel or anything else they might be adding at the same time. The contactor should be placed in a box that we're able to seal up. So either with exposed screws that we can put button seals on, or a locking tab similar to a meter socket has. So we have our information is on our website at whe.org. And if you go on top, there'll be a contractors. You click on the contractor tab. Then on the bottom side there, you'll see service manuals, wiring, diagrams, and equipment. Click on that. And that'll bring you to a page that has the service manuals and diagrams for our electric vehicles, our quick cash water programs, our metered water programs, ground source heat pump, dual fuel, heat storage. So you'll be able to find the diagrams for all of our programs on that page as well. If you do have any questions, you can contact so in summary, ZEF charging stations, they're the simplest and easiest to put in. You just gotta get your circuit from the panel to the ZEF charger. If you do a member-provided charging station, you will need additional metering and possibly control equipment depending upon the program they are on. Cannot have an extra outlet for EV charging. Charger needs to be hardwired. Wiring needs to meet NEC and local codes and will require inspection before we put our meter in. We do have the wiring diagrams on our website. And if you do have any questions, feel free to contact us. Again, my name is Chad. You can contact me or one of my coworkers, Grant or Sean, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you guys have. Are there any more questions right now, or? Yes?
Those chargers there for a homeowner that wants to use yours, does that $1,000 rebate cover probably the whole cost of that charger, or what do those chargers cost?
The sheet that we just handed out
Oh.
kind of outlines what the cost is.
Looks like it is.
So it will cover the cost of the charging station pretty much,
Sure, okay,
yeah,
thanks.
or help with the installation portion of it. One thing I would like to add too is the ZEF charging station originally was only offered with the overnight storage program. So with the rollout of the subscription rate, we're also rolling out that charging station can be used with the time of use. So that opens that up, that there's not really a situation that that charging station wouldn't be appropriate for someone that wants to do a program like that. Does that make sense? Okay.
I noticed on some of the EV ZEFs, they had the cool Wright-Hennepin logo on them. Since you're buying them from probably the co-op website, the ones that your members order, do they get the Wright-Hennepin logo on it, or is it more of a generic one?
They'll look just like the
I
one that's
see.
right up there. They'll have ZEF Energy on it, who does the metering equipment inside. And then Clipper Creek is the manufacturer of the charger, so those are the names they'll see on it.
I see. That was more of a marketing thing. Okay.
It might have been one of the original ones or something like that.
I'm pretty sure it says WH on it. The one that we had, the picture that you had WH on it.
No other questions? Up next. Oh,
GFI protection, are they built into the ZEF?
yeah, the ZEF does have built-in GFCI protection. Yep. Up next, Ashley and Kurt will talk about the new services and installation for solar.
Good morning. I am Ashley. I'll take care of part of this, and then Kurt will be up to get into some of the nitty-gritty. So just a quick little recap of what Kurt and I will cover this morning to finish it off, but we'll cover the levels 1, 2, and 3 charging stations, kind of when to contact WH New Services, and then if there's any upgrades that'll be required for 1, 2, or 3. Kurt will go over some examples of an EV and solar garage. And again, when to contact WH New Services for that on-site visit. Metering is site-specific for that. Kurt will also go through some common EV, solar, and generation questions that we get pretty frequently, as well as wiring, transformer upgrades, and a quick little preview of what's called the Nova Power Portal, where we do all of our solar applications on the residential. So just a quick little recap of the EV level 1 charging. This is just going to be requiring that ground standard 120 outlet. It is kind of I always kind of see it as like your DIY plug and go. It doesn't really require anything but just plugging into the wall. This is going to be typical for that daily low driving usage. It's obviously, like I said, it's suitable for that direct home plug-in. And typically upgrades are not required for your level 1. It does add about 5 miles per your 1 hour of charging. And this is not available to be on a program or rebate through Wright-Hennepin. Level 2 charging, this is where you're going to see most of your home and public charging stations. Kind of touch base on a few of those locations in the Wright-Hennepin territory in a previous presentation. Again, most common public charger that you're going to see is this level 2. It does have your standard EV connection plug that fits all of the current vehicles, but just keep in mind, except for Tesla. Tesla has that required adapter that they need. It does typically require a charging unit of your 240 power source. This is where it does get a little one step further, where it may require a service upgrade. And we can get into that in a couple of future slides. But main thing is to contact WH New Services to schedule an on-site visit with one of our field engineers. Additional charges may apply, which I can't tell you what those would be. That's why we need to do the site visit to see what's currently there to what member is going to be needing, so we know what we need to do to get them off on the right foot. And then kind of going off of April's presentation, just making sure that we get the member speaking to the product specialist for their off-peak and time of use charging options to that member. For the level 2 charging, it'll add about 20 to 60 miles per your 1 hour of charging, depending on your amps. That's the big one. And then our level 3 DC fast charger, obviously, based on kind of some of the previous presentations, your level 3 DC fast charger, typical for your commercial and or public charging. Right now, this is currently the fastest available, and it will require a service upgrade. Again, contact WH New Services to schedule that on-site visit with our field engineer. Specialty designs requirements on that, and then additional charges may apply. Same thing as the previous slide. Can't tell you what those could be until we have that on-site visit. For the DC fast charger, these stations, they're really, really effective if your battery is, I should say this, if it's under 80%, your battery is going to charge faster. Once it gets to that 80%, it slows down significantly on that charge. And so in turn, adding about 60 to 100 plus miles per about 20 minutes of that charging. And again, depending on your amps. So just kind of going through the EV process on contacting WH New Services and what that kind of all entails. So contacting the EV, a new EV service wants to get installed, contacting WH New Services. We're going to be requiring specs or the EV charger amp size. And then we're also going to confirm, has anybody talked to our product specialist to talk about, again, the rates and all that good stuff. WH field engineer is going to confirm on the member side what that data or load history. We're going to have our dispatch center check what they have currently for that. They're gonna go on site to verify size of transformer and wire size to that residence. Again, this is where that possible service upgrade that would be required, and additional charges may apply to that member to upgrade. And just kind of what I had said before about confirming that program, just checking to see if anybody has talked to our product specialist. If they have not, the member, we can get them up to April and Elena to talk about those things. If they have, then basically we'll just be in touch doing our on-site visit and going from there. Any questions on the level chargers or the process? It's kind of a quick rundown of how that works. Yes, sir.
So anytime a homeowner wants a level 2 charger, then they have to go through you and have somebody come out and check everything before they can decide whether they can put one in without a service upgrade?
It's not necessarily a matter of if they can. It's a matter of we want to make sure that, you know, what they're adding is going to be able to withstand what they're adding. So typically, for the amount that we've added so far, there hasn't been too many upgrades that have been needed.
Is the homeowner supposed to contact you or the contractor?
Typically, the homeowner has been contacting, but that's usually because they've already been in contact with Elena in April. And then we'll just schedule that on-site visit. A lot of times they'll send over their specs to us right away after that phone conversation. And we can usually get a field engineer out there that same week. So we can make it smooth and not have a lot of time lapse in between.
The only reason I ask is we get a lot of these charger jobs through Humeric. You've heard of them probably. A national company that works with the manufacturers to schedule installs. So we're getting the job and the homeowner really doesn't know what's going on. So we should just say, hey, contact Wright-Hennepin first.
Either way, for me, it's not a big deal if you guys contact us and we schedule something. Sometimes the homeowner's like, I really don't know how this works, or I don't have the specifics on how it works. You're better off just contacting my contractor. So we can do that too. It's just a matter of, for that upgrade, they're going to need to sign off on that because they're the ones ultimately that are going to have to pay for that upgrade. I don't think they'd appreciate somebody else signing off and then they get the bill.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I think there's something to add there is once we take down the information from the first install and you want to come back for a second charger, that type of thing, we'll have all that field data already assembled. So that second trip probably will not be required once we've been there. We're just verifying some wire sizes on our end that, you know, over the years we've had some changes, and our field data, we're just making sure it's up to date. We don't want something heating up in the box and stuff like that.
There you go, sir.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming. It's a good turnout for what initially I think we expected. So I'm going to talk at the 10,000 foot level on a lot of this. You know, so I've encouraged the questions because this is, I mean, obviously you're going to see a lot of lines going back and forth, but not a lot of wires, if you know what I mean. So what we have here is I have a GIS technician who likes to draw cars. I think he belongs in Detroit more than he belongs in the back drawing electrical diagrams. But he liked doing this, so he put this together. And what we got here is a typical installation that we just put together with, you know, we got a solar array and we got an electric charger. We show a ZEF charger here. If you don't have a ZEF charger, we have a meter that would get mounted on the external of the dwelling. This all feeds into a general tap box back to the dwelling. And then for our solar, we have the incoming and outgoing meters. And we'll kind of walk through some of these as we go here. But it's a pretty basic drawing. So some of the common questions we've been getting on our, from the new services side is pretty typical. New services will get a question, I'll just read these to you. New services will receive a question on wire size upgrades on site, and the meter location requirements, and what we look at is, what's going on here? All right, I got answers on, okay, so, all right, I'm catching up here. Thanks, Tanya, for setting this up for me. What the question originally was here was, what size wire do you have and what type of upgrade will be required? And to what Ashley was telling you guys, we have to go out and verify. We'd like to verify, we have a general idea what we think it is, and we need to know where your meter location is, because we've had a lot of people that want to put it right next to the ZEF charger in the garage or the charger in the garage, and we just can't get access to it like Chad mentioned, so this is kind of different having the answers given first. I don't just. I thought I took it all over. The second question here is more related to cost. If a member has to have a wire upgrade, we require the wire be installed by, or the member pays for the wire, and we pay for the transformer upgrade in this case, any kind of upgrade for a new transformer and that type of thing. What we've noticed just here in the last couple years is we've had several cases where the cul-de-sacs get a couple electric vehicles and our little green box gets really hot, and our loads are occurring at midnight and 2 a.m. in the morning. I mean, they're all programmed properly, but our load, we've had to change out some transformers, and that's just kind of the start of what I see this hitting the electric industry with. So we've been doing some of that. Let's see, the next question. This is more for your specialty on, will the service be required to be upgraded from a 200 to a 400? Typically, our 200 amp service that we provide, we will need to upgrade the wire from the transformer to the member, and that wire cost will be at the member's cost. Like I said, if there's a transformer upgrade, we will be upgrading that at that point. So please contact member services, and Ash will get you set up on what you need to get. I'm just going to move into talking about generation. This is kind of I'd like you guys' input here, because this is all new to kind of us. You guys all sat there and watched the Ford Lightning commercials on the Super Bowl, and some guy says at the end, "Oh, power your home," and I think everybody was after that concerns they had in Texas a few years ago. So we're talking about EV generation here, batteries, solar storage, your simple natural gas engines, your diesels, your solar, wind. We typically have two types of residential solar that's coming in. We're getting the 39.9 or less. That's our purple requirements from the federal government. And what we offer there is an average retail rate, which means it's what you pay for electricity minus the taxes we'll pay back to you on your consumption. Anything over 40 kW nameplated goes to avoided costs, which is substantially less than the 39.9 rate. If there's any further questions on that, we can talk more in detail after. This is kind of a typical requirement of what we're looking for right now for our standby generation in a home. If the first thing I would ask a member or you guys when you're talking to someone about putting a standby generator or anything in a home, I mean, our average outage time, knock on wood, is about 35 minutes across our system. We have some other ones where we've had some long ones at times, but we got a pretty good reliability set up, and we promote reliability. It's very important to us. So, but if we decide to go to a standby generator, whether it's a Ford Lightning like shown here, a big thing to kind of pay attention to as this becomes fruition, not all chargers are set up to promote back through them or discharge into the home. They're more of a one-way directional charger. They're not set up to be a bidirectional supporting charger. So keep that in mind if you start to if you get an application like that, keep that in mind, just what's going on. And what we're gonna require there is, we're gonna look for we need to have the auto transfer switch, the break before make type of situation where you take an outage to come back and forth. Right now, the electronics and everything that are getting set up here have not been all tested completely, but they will be coming in the next few years. So we're asking for a transfer switch in that case. If you are looking at this, and that's gonna be behind the meter, and that would keep us away from you and you away from us, because on that, when we reclose a circuit, we reclose 1,500 customers at a time, and we will take out your equipment. I mean, that, we just got the fault current to go with it, so. I guess have you guys seen much of this out in the field? I mean, I know it's new, it's exciting, and you got guys showing it to you on TV and stuff. It just, I just don't see this being something that gets traction unless you're more rural.
The export you're talking?
Yeah.
I've seen zero.
I had a customer down in southern Minnesota that was getting a Ford Lightning, and I looked over the specs, but they, at the time anyways, they had Sunrun was a certified installer of the system. You know? And so I think it's kind of tricky to keep it from backflowing, and they want to make sure people they have installing it aren't just going to make a mistake. And the other thing to consider too is it compatible with solar. If you disconnect with the auto transfer switch, and let's say you're powering your main panel with your battery, and solar is feeding that battery, it's going to get tricked to come on because it thinks the grid's up now.
Yeah.
And then if there's not enough load, it'll try to backflow into the battery, and who knows what that could do, unless it's designed.
Yeah, that's, I think when I was gonna save that for a later slide to what you're talking about, because IEEE 1547, which is your paralleling electronics, that's becoming more and more tested and improved, and that's, I think, what's happening a lot in the battery storage right now. And right now, this is just, if we would have somebody that just wants to, I don't know, disconnect from the grid, this is what we would require. They have to physically disconnect, especially if it's, I'll just advance here. Yeah, here it is anyways. This is kind of the area that we're talking about, these new Tesla wall backup. I'm going to use the Tesla here as we got these walls, and what they do is there's a computer chip inside here. This is, it's really, it's cool technology, if you want to call it cool, but it's also making engineers like me uncomfortable, because in the past, anything that happened from here down, I'd always say, you guys that's your problem, not ours. Now we're going to come into this box here, and we're going to want more than just a 98.98 power factor and 1.0 power factor setting in there. We're going to want a little more, and that's when it's going to get messy on who's liable for what you set. And then what I've heard from different manufacturers is the electricians are not going to be qualified to program that setting. You're going to have to get a certified Tesla something. And you guys probably know what it's like calling some of these solar guys on that 1-800 number that has like 10 million people on it and only one number to handle all the questions. It's been a little tricky. So this is coming, I know some of this is getting reviewed at the state level right now for some of the solar here, but in this particular case, this is just a simple, well, nothing simple anymore, but we have two solar arrays. One's plugged into the collector here, and it's tied to a battery set, and that battery set will turn on when the power goes out in the IEEE, and if this meets the IEEE requirements, it'll trip on and off with the power from the utility. It senses utility power when utility's good and when utility's not. So that's kind of something that's coming in the future. Just if you guys haven't seen these Tesla walls, they're out there. We've probably had a half a dozen so far that have come on. I guess was there any more EV questions before or generation questions, I mean, I'm trying to,
Kurt, earlier you mentioned that some of the you mentioned something about in the middle of the night, you're seeing certain problems and you were attributing them to maybe a transformer upgrade. Could you explain what you're seeing and what trend might be with the advent of
Yeah.
EVs?
yeah, what we've been actually seeing is, this one happened, the one I have in mind, it was we had 3 electric vehicles put in the same cul-de-sac within, it had to happen in the winter, which is the only reason I say winter is because we had a 25 kVA transformer that served 5 homes, and 3 of them added electric vehicles, and it ended up, the numbers I saw are calculated, and Nathan was nice enough to send them back to dispatch that they just added 3 vehicles, but by the time it caught to us, it showed we had probably 50 kW load on that 25 kVA transformer, and we found it in January, so I'm thinking that, thank God we live in Minnesota, you know, type of thing, because it probably saved, it didn't have an outage, that's what was more impressive, it hung in there, we found it, and the guys said it doesn't even look like it smelled like it got lit up, but it did have, from the metering data, it had almost that much, you know, I think it was 42 kW if I remember right, and that's just not our practice. And we're starting to see a lot of, you know, when you build the perfect distribution system, you put a 15 kVA out there, they load it up to 10 or 12, and you got the perfect transformer set up, and that's worked for a long time, but now we're all going back into these established neighborhoods and adding these EVs. I mean, one of them is the size of almost 2 to 3 homes when that turns on, you know, and if you think about the usage patterns, it's kind of crazy and it's really interesting to listen to these. I've been getting probed by a lot of people from the West Coast more that want to take advantage of some of this grant funding. They'll come in and offer these high-speed charging things they'll put in a grocery store, and literally the service that we have to put into that grocery store electric vehicle pod is bigger than the grocery store itself. It's kind of the mental concept of how much electric juice is going to flow with these electric cars is kind of crazy. I mean, you got to build for it. It probably won't, and like, I know everybody's looking at it. It's kind of like it's not here yet. It's coming, but is it going to get here? You know, and that's why we're here. We're trying to promote it. It's a great benefit for Wright-Hennepin, and as these things, if they do take off as great as what they're talking, we're going to get to a point where our electric grid is full. You know, we have to build infrastructure, and that'll be the day that I come in on we meet our board in this same room, so I have to come up in front of the board and say, we're going to add a substation because of the electric car growth. You know, that's kind of, I didn't think in my career I'd ever say something like that or have something. I mean, this is the biggest thing since air conditioning for us. You know, when AC came on, that was a big push of electric usage. So I'm babbling on. So if there's no more questions, I'll move on to some of the solar stuff we have. If you go on our website, you'll find our Nova portal here. And that's pretty much will set you up for everything you need to input in to get solar. We ask for a $100 application fee, and that's non-refundable. There's also additional charges for anything between, for our fast track system, for anything over 20, you pay an extra $1 per kW. And so then what happens in this particular case is you submit your one lines and other equipment, and we review it, we approve it, and we'll ask for a $400 interconnection fee to tie to our grid. So once that's done, we also then review the transformer connection that we will have there. In this particular case, if you picture this, when I said EVs, we pay for the transformer. When I say solar, you pay for the transformer upgrade, because if you think about it, we don't have any rate no more to collect income off of that. You're actually coming back to us with power that we have to consume versus you being the consumer, so thus the reason for the change in transformer cost recovery. So then once the job is completed, or once all the paperwork's completed, you complete it on your end, and then WH will come out, make their completions, and do our testing and check out. See here, there's, as far as the documentation that will happen, we'll have a certificate of completion that'll help with all your, any kind of grant money that's being applied for. We'll do the permit and electrical inspection report. We request some pictures of the installations that show the disconnects. So that's kind of what, keep it simple, that's what happens. I mean, the one lines we might go back and forth on because we have some requirements as far as, if you look here, we have this, we got the big blue arrow, but we have 2 meters on, for any of you guys that worked on our system, we do a kind of a reverse power flow meter. That the reason I don't want to take away from the questions and answers, but the reason we do that is because we can read, our meters can read one direction. So by us putting what I would say a production meter, I'll call it a production meter even though it's a net meter, the direction of the power flow of the power coming back to the grid will be read in this meter, and the general service will be read in from the general service side, and then the net that comes out of that is what's paid for, a credit is given for. So a lot of cases, there's months where, obviously like this January, I think we saw some real poor solar outputs. I don't know if you guys heard the complaints about that, but we have a couple different community solar projects. I don't think they showed up on the grid, on our grid, till about late January when the snow finally melted. It was rather a rough January for solar. So, but that's all. That's kind of solar in general is what we look for. We look at the nameplate's the key. If you guys want average retail rate, keep it 39.9 or less, because if it goes to 40, we look at the nameplate of the inverter as our driver. If you guys go over that 39.9, we have to go to the voided cost. That's the rules. Yes, sir.
I was gonna ask on it, so I just wanted to get clarification, because we're starting to see some inverters that are 40 kW AC nameplate rating. Same inverters can be programmed to be power limited to 39,999 kW
So
AC.
you're seeing the same stuff I'm seeing, or we're seeing.
And we have in some cases been able to use signage to say this inverter has been power limited to this, and we, show that. And so I don't know if something like that would be acceptable. The alternative is, because there's a lot of inverters that are 20K, so if you use 220Ks, you're still got a problem.
Right.
Or you could back down to a 33K or a 30 kW separately, but then you're losing a lot of AC potential. So.
Exactly. And I think I'm up here today. If you come next year, I'll probably have a different answer, because I think what's going to happen is that dial down, as you call it, or let's just call it a varistor or whatever, you crank it down to a certain setting. That's I think being looked at the state level, as far as not necessary for approval, but as far as the solar producers are requesting that, where they just want to put they don't want to keep coming back. So if we can figure out a way to dial that down and get it authorized at say the Department of Commerce level, where they acknowledge that, then we'll acknowledge it, because we'll kind of have to. I think I don't know, my personal experience when that first came on with like renewable SD and a few wind places, they said they would dial these things down. As soon as we went out there and caught their first hour of metering, they were over the 39.9 and generating like 60 kW on a nice windy day. And so, I mean, there's a few bad seeds out there, I guess, that are going to try to take advantage, and that's what we're trying to prevent. It doesn't pay. I mean, we're trying to play by the rules, allow you to generate, and that's right now the rules that are in place say 39.9. So, but
I've heard some co-ops utilities monitor that, and if they hit that, then you're not getting that rate. But again, that's a tough one. You're in a program and then they just change your rates because all of a sudden you produce too much.
Yeah, it doesn't, it's not fair, but then I can also see the exposure to the utility where I sit is, you know, if we let, you know, it's just a simple 40. Well, next guy wants 41, next guy wants 45, and I have a device that cranks it down, and when that device doesn't work, how do you, I mean, that's some of the stuff that's getting talked about right now. So I see some changes coming significantly in the solar, especially too down in this area, because right now with the power factor is what we normally set right now and just let it go, and most of that's a factory setting. But right now there's other support in there that there's like a 30 slot programmable setting group of voltage levels, and I mean, you let an engineer in there start looking at what we could do with something like that, and if we get it times it by 100, we legitimately got a volt-var support system, you know, that we could come up with, and we do the settings right. We could do a lot of interesting things on the utility side, but right now it's going to create a lot of confusion, I think, on the residential side. So, but just be aware some changes are coming down there, and I think I'm not trying to promote next year's meeting, but come next year, and I think I'll have a little more information on how we're gonna handle it or treat it or what we're seeing in the industry. Here's the answers. You guys, this is like Jeopardy. So anybody want to take a shot at what the question is?
Why do we need a production meter? Okay.
Give that guy a card. I think so the next one is, how do we wire a second meter? Obviously, it's to reverse flow option. We kind of talked about that. So, this next one is kind of it comes into play when you're putting in a solar. There's a bypass handle in that cabinet. Say you test it all out. We're timing it out to try to get one of our guys to come out and commission it. What we ask is you jumper that out. Do not use the bypass handle because you won't be able to get the cover on, or not the cover, but the panel cover. And a lot of you guys are nice enough to either muscle it and bend it good so we can't get it to work, or you dismantle it and it's stuck in a bypass position. Then we have to rebuild that, and what we're asking is you just jumper it out or put similar to just a glass jumper over it, and we'll get out there. When we get out there, we'll take care of putting the meter in, and we should be good to go. We're asking that no double lugging occur. We request a tap box to make all the connection points. This is just, like the question says, is why do we require a tap box? Well, it's for bypassing and doing whatever you need to get around the main general service. So.
Your double lug deal, is that only with interconnected systems that you guys don't allow that? Because if somebody wants to have a house and a shed, you guys assume would allow double lugging, or you guys don't at all? Like the mill bank, like Adlugs, the ones that are listed.
If you can get, I'm torn. I've been at WH here for a couple years, and my previous job we allowed double lugging, and we actually encouraged it because that was the easiest way to keep all your programs separate. So I guess, guys, I don't know what's our response on that. Right now, we don't allow it, or we try to avoid it the best we can. I think in the future, though, it's going to change.
Again, I like to call it Adlug because double lugging we wouldn't allow, right? Where you jam two under one.
Yeah, that's
just the Adlug, the listed.
Yeah, I mean that's I think very well industry wide accepted. But right now here we haven't been allowing that
At all.
At all is my
any installation.
Yeah, but so that's kind of, I'm not saying that won't change, and we need to have meetings like this to talk about it. If it's something that you guys see a lot more of elsewhere, well, Wright-Hennepin can change too. I mean, we're learning as we go here, like Robin's very much been stressing. I mean, we don't know what technology we're gonna have tomorrow. It's just been then the technology, then you mix the state with it on the backside with what they're making state laws and stuff like that or mandating. We get kind of caught in the between. So I guess, is there any more questions? I mean, I really appreciate the comments.
There was kind of a state initiative to change the power factor from 1 to 0.98. Is that still a requirement as part of the commissioning, or are you letting the default power factor of the inverter, which is typically 1, go through?
Yeah, I'd stay with the 1. That'd be our preference, just because it's really helped with, I've noticed on some of our equipment for our community solar, if we stay with 1, we don't have a lot of, you talked about the hunting issue with the batteries. We also have that with regulators and tap changers at our substations. So if we keep our power factor stable out there, we don't get a lot of capacitance moving around, and that helps us stabilize the distribution grid. Any other questions?
I'm just curious about bidirectional meters. Is that something you guys are talking about, or you're gonna stick with what you currently have with 2 meters in series?
Yes, no, maybe. How's that sound?
That's not for me.
It's a very, yeah, when you come from a utility that has it and it works well, maybe I should just give you a background on where we sit with this is, we do the multiple meters because we can read all the meters and it comes into our billing, all of our softwares and everything receives it in this way. If we were to change to a bidirectional setup, we'd have to reconfigure our whole billing and acceptance procedures. So right now, it's on our list we're looking at. I mean, because there's going to be, I can see the future holding, we talk about these solars. These things are going to become more and more, people are, instead of accepting it at this point, they're going to want some kind of credit, the new 24, is it 2040 or 2040, I think, when they want to go to all carbon free. Well, what happens in here is what's produced out of here is going to have what they call a REC, or a renewable energy credit. And I'm thinking that's going to have a value of some kind. I have no idea where you sell it or how you get credit for it. And I'm guessing there's a big money stream right there for one of you guys if you want to go become the REC guy or something and count green tags or something for the whole industry.
Sell them to somebody else that needs them, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of, we looked at that back when I first seen solar and wind. It was like, yeah, somebody's got to get these green credits. So I changed the statewide uniform contract that the co-op I was working for at the time. I said, we're going to take the green credits, and I think there was the Attorney General office came back on us and said, you cannot modify the state uniform contract for any kind of renewable credits or anything like that. And I'm like, oh, somebody's thinking way ahead of me there. So, but anyways, I guess my next thing is to introduce Luke here. Nemeth, most of you probably know him. Luke's been with, you've been an inspector for a long time, it looks like, Luke, and most of his territory is to the west, so.
This is about as far east as I go.
So I guess, just to keep it simple, Luke, I'll give you the stage.
I don't know if you guys, I was just kind of curious in here, how many of you guys are contractors doing installs out there in the field? Most of the guys in class here. I don't really have a presentation. It's only 15, 20 minutes. So I was just kind of curious, if you guys are doing installs. Next question obviously is like EV, that's a fairly simple thing that we can add most sites. And I know we kind of hit about solar here. How many guys in here install solar? Couple in here. That's usually more specialized. You either get the guys that will go into solar, or I don't want nothing to do with solar, and there's usually no in between on them. It's one or the other. EV, that's something that we generally see people, okay, I want an EV charger, okay, I can add a circuit for that, right? So I don't know if you guys want to talk more EV, more solar stuff, or you want to talk more general code. Any preferences out there? We obviously got a 23 code that we're gonna adopt here. Looks like it's in play to adopt July 1st, as long as we don't get any other hiccups in it. But I think we've went through the process already. If there's anybody against adopting it, so like last cycle, 2020, we had an issue, Housing First, we had some issues with them, worked through that 3 years ago. Doesn't sound like that's, happening, we already are beyond that process, so I think we're gearing for July 1st, we'll see if that happens. Again, being no comments, a few of the things, I just kind of wrote a few key things, new code coming up, things to remember. You guys are contractors out there. Couple of them I wrote down here, obviously ground fault. We don't near have, the code changes this cycle to me aren't even close to what we had last cycle. Last cycle was huge. A lot of major ground fault issues, a lot of service enclosure issues. So there was a lot of stuff going on in the last cycle. This one, I'd say, it's not gonna affect us as much dollar-wise or anything on jobs. There are some significant things we gotta keep in mind. 210.8A, one, it's like kitchens in a dwelling. So in part A, we're in dwellings. Remember that change now. Now kitchens, it's not just the countertop stuff. Everything in a kitchen's gotta be ground faulted. That's gonna include all your 250 volt receptacles, 120. We're gonna treat it like a commercial kitchen now. We're gonna draw a line, say, that's your kitchen, right? Ground faulted all. So that's a major thing that we gotta keep in mind once we adopt 23 code. You get in part B, they added to the area with sinks. They added beverage to that. Example, you go to a Quick Trip, normally we'd go out and look at all these, coffee stations, donut stations, all this. You got a sink in that cabinet. We normally would say only within 6 foot of that sink. The last cycle, they added sinks and permanent cooking. Again, you go to a Quick Trip, they're not cooking out there. We'd say, nah, you don't need ground fault other than that 6 foot from the sink. Well, now they added beverage to that list. So now we go out there, and now we have that sink, and if they got a pop machine or a slushy on that same kind of cabinet, now that whole cabinet section is gonna require ground fault. So that's another thing to keep in mind with ground fault provisions. Part D in 210.8, they added all kinds of appliances, right? That's another major thing. I wrote them down so I didn't forget them here, but ranges, wall ovens, cooktops, clothes dryers, microwaves, all that stuff is dedicated equipment needs ground fault protection. That's a major thing, right?
Like a double oven that fly in, double oven.
Exactly. I mean, that's huge. Why? I don't know. We can talk all day long about why, stuff gets pushed into code. There's a variety of people that are on code panels. I think it's about 50-50 manufacturers versus real world people like electricians, contractors. So who knows why some of this gets pushed. Clothes dryers, that one makes no sense to me. We don't have washer requirements to have all those ground fault, but the dryer we do. So some of these, they don't make sense to me. That's hardwired or they plug in, right? When you get to D, that's just that appliance itself. Doesn't matter how it's interconnected. Couple other major things, 210.52, you get into islands, peninsulas, kitchen countertops. Major change, we can't put receptacles on the sides of those cabinets anymore. We've done that for years, right? Put receptacles on the sides of these cabinets, especially islands, right? That's where we see it big time. We can't do that anymore. That's gonna be obsolete. You gotta have your receptacles either in, on, or above. So when we talk about those provisions, normally what we're gonna see is a pop-up requirement. Now, when we get to that island, the catch to that is no longer are any gonna be required on that island. So it's kind of a unique requirement that you can't put them on the side, but none are gonna be required. But if you wanna put one on that island, it's gotta be pop up through the top of that. You could have something, I suppose, hang down, but I haven't seen anybody do that, other than if you have cabinets and you got uppers above them, within 20 inches, you could have receptacles. Sometimes we see that on wall cabinets, not per se on islands. Surge, that's gonna be pushed into feeders residentially, was in services prior, now it'll be in feeder panels, so like apartments, dwellings, any feeder panel. You go to a house, you add a sub panel for, maybe you're adding it for something you're gonna add for Wright-Hennepin, maybe EV or whatever, you gotta have surge in that sub panel now. So make sure you're aware of that with surge protection. Emergency disconnects, that's another one that's gonna be pushed into feeders. So if you go to a dwelling and we got a pole service, and now we got a feeder going to that building, and you change out that panel in that building, I would say the majority contractors looked at it as a service, even though it came from a service, right? It was a feeder. They probably didn't need to add an emergency disconnect at that time. 23 code's gonna say you need to meet the requirements of the emergency disconnect for feeders, just like services. Now, another catch is there's a footage on there within sight now. Can't say I really like that requirement. Again, the area I inspect, used to inspect Stearns County, a lot of rural. What I oversee now as area rep, 12 counties. This is the edge of my territory, Wright County, go all the way to the bump out of the state to the Dakotas. That's the area I cover. A lot of rural stuff. So I got a pole service out here that's 100 feet away from the house. Now, if I go to that house, I gotta have a disconnect within 50 feet, is what the code says, for a feeder disconnect, emergency disconnect. No longer does that one out of the service qualify. Can't say I 100% agree with that, but if you're doing a new installation, I'd say make sure you put one on the exterior of the dwelling now, right? You're gonna have the pole service 100 feet away, come up, put something on the exterior of the house as a feeder, shoot inside the house. Now, remodel, existing, that's where we're gonna have a little leeway, talk to the inspectors about that. You got that same scenario 100 feet away, and now I'm gonna change out the panel, cause guess what, replacement's gonna require this now. Currently, the way we do panel changeouts in a dwelling, if you stay at the same capacity, we're not making you upgrade and put emergency disconnect. That's gonna go away in 23, because the code says replacement. So you go into that dwelling, doesn't matter if it's a feeder panel, service panel, you're gonna change that panel out in for whatever reason, even if you stay at the same capacity or increase it, you know, whatever, you gotta add the emergency disconnect at that time. Now, if it's new installation, you're gonna have to meet code within 50 feet, have emergency disconnect of that feeder or service to that dwelling. Existing, so if you got the service over here 100 feet away, we got the panel in the dwelling, and it's inside, and we're gonna change it out. If I come out there and I can see that clear as day, there's the disconnect, we're probably not gonna make you add that. The worry I have is, okay, let's say this existing dwelling has a feeder in the middle of the building, because they did underground and came into the middle of the building, into their mechanical room. How easy is that gonna be for me to add emergency disconnect on the exterior of that building? It's not gonna be fun, is it? Are we gonna dig down? What if they went below the footings? We're gonna dig down 10 feet just to find that, to bring it back up and add emergency disconnect on the outside of that dwelling? So talk to your inspectors, something that's existing like that, as long as we can see the service, say, yeah, I know it's beyond the 50 feet within sight language, but man, it's right there, I can see it. We'll call it a day and just replace that panel. So that's some of the, you know, major things that are gonna happen. Again, there's not a lot of them, versus last cycle. Another one that happened in the 2020 code in 23046, they had language about splices and taps in there. And it basically said starting January 1st of 2023, so this is already enforced because it was part of the previous code, is any splice or tap that is on service conductors has to be service rated. Where we run into this the most is solar. So quite often what we'll see is either terminal box or right inside the panel or in the meter enclosure that contractors will tap off of those load side of the meter, but it's still service conductors, and they'll shoot over and go through maybe another production meter and then go hit a separate service for solar. Ilsco, Polaris, those are common lugs that we see used there. I think, I'm trying to think, was it Ilsco? There was one manufacturer that had one of them listed now. But again, this is something that happened 3 years ago. I hate this where these manufacturers are so far behind the 8 ball. You know, they just, doesn't make sense to me. They knew about this 3 years ago, and yet we're just addressing it now. And this took place January already. So when we see a solar installation, somebody taps in the meter, you know, or in the panel and shoots back out and does a separate service disconnect, we're questioning, are those lugs rated for service use? Granted, most of the lugs probably aren't gonna change. It's probably the same lug, it's just a listing issue is what it's gonna be. And then they gotta be labeled that they're approved for service conductors. Another big one is PVC. Now that's gonna be for whatever you guys are using. Could be EV stuff, it could be, you know, solar, could be normal wiring. There was an added part in there, a part B, for expansion. Now, we all know what expansion, if you deal, you know, with PVC, we gotta plan for expansion because of temperature differential, right? So if we go in a car wash, we know that temperature is probably gonna get down to maybe 40 and, you know, get up to 90 degrees in there. We gotta figure, okay, at that temperature, how much is that PVC gonna expand? You know, we got charts that tell us that, right? If you're gonna expand more than a 1/4 inch in any run, you gotta put expansion fittings in. That's old language. New language talks about earth movement. So we're talking about underground pipes coming from grade, going up to a meter, going up to, you know, terminal box, whatever it is. Code really doesn't differentiate. It could be a simple wire maybe for a septic system, right? The code doesn't differentiate that. What we are gonna have, usually we always publish a FAQ once we adopt the new code on a bunch of the questionable things, how we're gonna call it. And with this expansion, we're gonna let people make what we are gonna call a slip fitting. Now, if you've seen them, some utilities require them. You can buy them from different Carlon, different companies. A lot of them call like meter riser, they'll call them. And they basically have, like the ones I've seen, Carlon. It's got a 2-inch connector at the top. It's basically expanded out through manufacturing to be a 2.5-inch pipe, right? But it's necked down to 2-inch, got a connector right on it. Slap that right in the meter. So it's 2.5-inch, your 2-inch pipe goes right inside there, right? So you're gonna have a 2-inch pipe that goes into the earth. You're gonna have direct bury wires go up that 2-inch pipe, and then they're ultimately inside that slip fitting. So the whole thing is just gonna move. There's no O-ring, anything like that. We're gonna basically allow people to make their own of that. I know a few years ago we had somebody ask if they can make their own, and at the time we said no, they all gotta be listed fittings. We're gonna let people make those. If you wanna make your own slip fitting, what we're calling it, because it's basically gonna be anything that comes from underground that is gonna require that. So that's a huge difference of how we look at it now. I do see a lot of jobs spec'd out that they want expansion fittings coming up to their gear, equipment. But normally that's direct pipe from A to B. Then we know that the pipe is gonna move. When we talk about this earth movement and these slip fittings, that's just for direct bury conductors, right? So that's where we're just stubbing into earth, and we got direct bury. We're gonna leave our frost loop, but we still got a plan for that PVC movement, right? Where it's gonna be stuck in the ground and frost heaving, stuff moves. I know we've all seen meters and stuff where there's a gap now, right? There's a gap between that PVC and the meter or terminal box where I can see the conductors now, right? So that's what this is gonna prevent. 3-foot dead zone, not a huge deal, but in bathroom, shower areas, that was expanded to include HVAC stuff. I guess there was an issue with that. Receptacles, they kind of cleared up that language. AC disconnects, they made it clear about working space in that section. Mobile homes, they're gonna mimic emergency disconnect, so now the mobile home disconnect can go up to 50 feet instead of the 30 like it used to be, because it's gonna mimic the emergency disconnect requirements.
What did you mean that was expanded for HVAC? Like the exhaust fan needs to be?
No, not, so in 440, you get heating and cooling, apparently, Wade Schley, area rep down south, had an apartment building go in, and in part of their installation in their bathrooms, they had a mini split unit, an indoor unit mounted right in the shower. And so it was a way to not allow that stuff in that shower area. So you got that dead zone, basically, it's up to 8 feet is what it says, and then it's above the shower or bathtub rim. 3 feet in all directions. We can't have receptacles in there, can't have lights in there, you know, we can't have HVAC now in there. So that was just kind of cleared up that it also goes all the way to grade. Because some people say, okay, if you measure from the tub rim, okay, you got that dead zone from the rim down. Well, now it says, no, all the way to grade. Because the language was actually taken from lighting. So that's why it was, why would you go down, right? Because it's talking about receptacles as well. Exception in there with receptacles, like you got a toilet. There is an exception that you can put a single receptacle by a toilet, in that it's on the far side of the toilet. So if we got in the corner here, like a tub or shower, and we got a toilet right next to it, and we need a receptacle for bidet or whatever type of heated seat or whatever, as long as the receptacle's on the opposite side from the shower, there's an exception for that as well. There was always an exception for cabinets in there. That hasn't changed. So that kind of is, you know, I just wanted to summarize a few of the major things, you know, that we're going to see in the 23 for some of these changes. Another question I always ask people is bulletins. You guys ever look at the bulletins on the state website? Usually I get hardly anybody that does. The state, we have all kinds of bulletins about different things. One example, you know, most of you guys are contractors in here. And I'd say all the years I inspected, if you wired a detached garage out of the multifamily building, that better be an AC or MC cable or behind sheetrock. It's the way I always inspected, right? It's the way we all did. Years ago, I'd say about 5+ years ago, the state decided, and they voted on it before I was, you know, area rep, and they decided we're gonna treat that like a residential garage. So they're gonna allow NM in there. Well, now if you've ever inspected under me or anybody else, or, you know, 5+ years ago, in your mind, I gotta rewire an AC/MC cable, right? I can't have NM exposed in a multifamily detached garage, you know, like one of these long 20-space garages. We got a bulletin that tells you otherwise. So this bulletin on our website basically says, I got a multifamily garage, we're gonna let you wire that NM cable just like a regular single-family garage. Now, if you don't know that, you're not aware of that, and you bid this job, and you're like, well, I know we gotta use AC/MC cable, because this is not a residential garage, right? Not a 1 or 2 family garage. And you bid it against somebody that knows we got a bulletin on that, you're probably gonna lose the bid, right? Another example of a bulletin, moved-in house. You guys ever, anybody in here wired a moved-in house, moved it from one property, bring it to another? When I used to inspect moved-in house, we'd look at the power to that house, that's it. Anything new you added. We kind of grandfathered the rest of the structure in, right? Didn't look at anything else. We got a bulletin tells you otherwise. So now how we've been enforcing it, and this has probably been 6, 7+ years ago. That thing's gotta meet arc fault, gotta meet ground fault, it's gotta meet tamper. All the provisions, gotta have equipment grounds. So you move in an old house, you might be redevicing that whole thing or even rewiring some stuff. It even goes as far as talk about light fixtures, that if you got a light fixture that says it needs 90° C wire, if that's old NM, doesn't have the NMB, that's not rated 90° C. I don't know too many inspectors are gonna check that one, but I'm just telling you, it's in the bulletin, right? I'm not gonna grab a ladder and go look at a fixture and see what that fixture's rated versus the old NM in an existing house, but bulletin tells you otherwise. So that's 2 extremes of what bulletins are gonna do for you, right? You know, that some of them, oh, I didn't realize that, moved in house, I just figured I'd do the service in the basement and I'm done. No, you might be doing more. Or you go to that multifamily, man, I lost the bid and here's why, right? So there's a lot of bulletins out there that help explain stuff. You know, I recommend you at least check them out, print them off, throw them in the bathroom, give you some good reading material, right? So that's, you know, some of the stuff I like to talk about when I teach seminars is, you know, some of these different things that, you know, just make sure you're up on that stuff, that you know how we call certain things. Again, the FAQ, once we adopt that, we will publish, you know, the FAQ of some of these things I just talked about, some of these changes that, okay, how are you gonna call this, or how are you gonna call this, where there's controversial aspects of that. You know, how are we gonna call, you know, certain unique circumstances. Electric vehicles, that's something that we've had some issues with residentially. I know there was some talk about adjustable trip settings, different things. And we see that in some of these electric vehicle charging units where you can adjust them. The problem with adjusting them is, who can adjust that back up, right? The code really says it's gotta be password protected. The owner's not supposed to know that. If you get into a case where you're gonna adjust it because you screwed up or something, we're probably gonna require you to sign off on a document that you adjusted that setting, it's password protected, the owner doesn't know, and then we're gonna have you upload that document to the permit. Example on residential is most residential contractors use NM cable, right? NM is gonna get you in trouble with the electric vehicle charging. Especially if you're talking to this higher, what were these, 11.5 kW, that's where you're gonna get into trouble. So at 11.5 kW, 240 volts, you're 47.92, so 48 amps. Take that times 125%, because it's all continuous load, you're gonna get up to 59.9, 60 amps, right? The problem with NM cable is that, even though it's got 90° C conductor value, the ampacity is 60° C. You go read 334, it's gonna tell you that is a 60° C ampacity conductor. So now we take that same number 6 THHN in a conduit system, that's 65 amps, right? We take NM cable at number 6, You got a 55 amp conductor. Guess what? That ain't good enough for a 60 amp continuous load, right? A lot of times we get those cases where contractors will throw in that number 6 NM on a vehicle charging, thinking they're good. Nope. Then what do? Because they screwed up. Well, if it's a close distance, they'll change it out, right? Put a piece of, seal tight or whatever in the wall, put THHN, we're good. Long distance, oh, let's adjust it, right? That's usually the fix. I said, well, get ready for an owner complaining. You think they want it to be less, right? They want to charge at a lower rate? Probably not. So keep that in mind with electric vehicle charging and NM, that realize that that's a 60-degree ampacity conductor, not 75 like THHN. So we've had a lot of those cases, where we've had issues. And then we adjust it, then we require the document that you sign off and upload a document on that. Like I did state earlier, there are some units that can plug in, but also you can hardwire them. And they have a higher ampacity, some of these, again, if they're hardwired. But make sure, again, you're not using NM cable. Now, I think NM goes up to 2 or something. I guess usually 6 is about the largest I ever see NM installed. But, I mean, you could go NM cable larger, but it's probably something special order. So, solar, there was some talk about solar. And again, if you haven't done solar, make some calls, pay an extra fee or two to have a inspector come out there and look at stuff. I've had some guys say, hey, we're new to this, come out here, and gladly pay to come out and look through stuff. If you're not used to solar, man, there's some companies that, man, do they royally fail. I'd say the biggest part of solar, which is probably the most time consuming, is where they fail is where the wires hang down below the array. And it's the simplest thing to check before you leave that job. And still to this day, I've just looked at a couple last week. You get there and it's terrible. It looks like a bird's nest up there, right? The code really says it's got to be supported every 2 feet. And if we see any cables hanging, we're probably going to have you fix it. It's not an easy thing to fix, is it? We got to remove all those modules and support it, strap it up, and then reinstall all that. Major problems. And I'll get some contractors that, depends what crew they got even. They'll have one crew that, man, they passed. Next crew, miserable fail, right? But that's one of the simplest things before you leave. Can you see the blue sky or gray, depending on the day, or snow, whatever it is? Underneath that panel, can you see, the sky behind you? No wires hanging down. Simple thing to look at before you leave if you're doing solar.
Yeah, those charging stations, if they're adjustable, but you have to use tools to adjust them and they're inside a cover, then they're, I don't understand.
That's the way the code says. It
Right.
talks about that.
Right.
The problem is what kind of tool? A Phillips screwdriver, like the owner doesn't have one of them. That's the problem that we worry, because what's going to happen that the owner finds out that, oh, I can crank this baby up and charge quicker. They're probably going to do it, right?
Yeah.
And
They passed for us, that's why when you said that.
but that's why we would just want the document that you've at least taken the time to verify it or something, because a lot of them are passwords. They're not per se a locked panel.
Right,
So.
it's on their phone or something.
Yeah, and
That's not allowed, from what I understand.
yeah, and that's the hard part, is how do you prevent a password? It's all we're saying is we want a document that says you at least did it, right? That you got your password, the owner doesn't know it, we're done, right? There, isn't nothing else we can really do with those adjustable ones other than we got a document from you.
Most of our EV installs are remodel situations, and we've been telling customers that we will not run anything less than 60 amps, so we'll run MC cable.
Yeah.
That's what we've been doing.
And to me, that would be the best scenario. Why not? You guys are selling the stuff, right? Don't you want to sell the best, producing for them? Because if you crank stuff down or you go with less ampacity, somebody's probably not going to be happy with that. So why not sell them, the max that thing can produce? That's what they want,
Luke, 2 questions on a ground mount system, like a 40K. What height, is there a ruling on how high that perimeter fence has to be? 4 feet, does that work, or is
4 feet, I would say, is adequate. And I don't know if our office just didn't want to write a whole thing of what works and doesn't work. If somebody ever, you know, questions, I'd say pick up the phone, call one of us, but to me, 4 feet, no problem. You know, I usually say, you know, if it's 3 feet, well, most of us probably, depending on your inseam, can straddle that, right? The other thing with a fence, we don't want single strand fence and, you know, like a single high tensile, because I can pass through that, right? So it should be some type of mesh, welded wire, cattle fencing, something that's got a mesh that we can't pass through, right? There's a wide variety of fences available, snow fence, you know, plastic, metal, and something 4 feet high. Can be, have gates in it, doesn't have to be locked, right? It's not that it's inaccessible, it's just we wanna limit the access that somebody opens the gate, well, they know they're going in there, right? Where if we don't have a fence, somebody walks up, you know, a little different. So it's not like it's restricted access, just, you know, restricted by a gate, fence, whatever.
Second question, where would be the code reference for those service rated tap
That
lugs?
was 230, what is it, 46, I think? Yeah, 230-46, the line connections, and it's actually in the 2020 code and has a January 1st, it's in the 23 code as well, but that's where it refers to January 1st, 2023 date.
Got it.
That happened, I mean, they do that every now and then in the code. They have future date requirements. Boy, one that really got a lot of people into a bind was, I think it was back in the 11 code, and it had a January 1st to 14 date. And it had to do with replacing receptacles in areas that required arc fault. A lot of guys didn't realize, oh, that went into effect January 1st to 14 before we even adopted the 14 code. Okay, you redeviced the living room, you need arc fault. Oh no, I just redeviced it. Yeah, you redeviced it. That's what the 11 code said. It had a future date. So. Any other questions? I think that's about my time or too much.
I want to thank everybody for coming today. If you have any additional questions or anything that comes up, please feel free to give us a call. We do have a new program. So on our residential rebates, there's a spot for a contractor to be listed. And so we've got a kind of a promotion going through from June to December that we're going to compile all of the contractors that are listed on those rebate documents, and we're going to have a drawing just to kind of thank you guys for promoting the programs and talking about them. And we're going to have a $50 gift card drawing for June through December, right, Annette? Yeah, so any questions about that, just let us know. But there's a spot on the actual residential rebate document for the contractor that did the installation. So the homeowner can fill that out, or you guys can help them fill it out, whatever works for you guys. But for coming today, we have a couple drawings. So I'm gonna have Elena or Vanna. This is 4A.
We got James Darabi.
Yeah, all right.
And then we got Tim
Gorski.
Jody Gilliard.
That's you, all right.
And Jeff Warner. And we got Brian Demmer.
We hope that you found today useful, and we're open to any feedback that you might have or anything else that you're looking to hear from us. But we appreciate you coming this morning. So thank you very much. Thank you.